The wind rolled across the New Mexico plain like a living thing, dragging dust along the ground and whispering. Through the scrub as Ethan Cole guided his horse toward a narrow arroyo. The sun was dropping low, staining the land in copper and fire, and he was already thinking about the long ride home when a flicker of movement caught his eye. At first, he thought it was an animal, a coyote maybe, but then he saw the shape was wrong. Too small, too still. He slowed, heart tightening, and spotted a young girl crouched among the mesquite roots, trying to make herself invisible. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9. Her dress was torn, her moccasins worn thin, and dust streaked her cheeks. Yet her eyes were sharp, dark, and unafraid in a way only necessity could teach. She watched him closely, ready to bolt at the first wrong move. Ethan dismounted slowly, keeping his hands where she could see them. He had crossed paths with Apaches before. Some friendly, some not, but never like this. Never with a child alone in the vastness. "I won't hurt you," he said softly, unsure if she understood. He set his rifle against a rock and knelt, lowering himself to her level. The girl hesitated, then straightened just enough to meet his gaze. Hunger trembled beneath her bravery. Ethan pulled his canteen free and held it out. After a long moment, she crawled forward and drank. Carefully at first, then greedily, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. Her name when she spoke it was Nayeli. The word sounded fragile and strong all at once. Through broken English and gestures, Ethan gathered that her people had scattered after trouble, shots, shouting fear. She had run and kept running until she couldn't anymore. The plane had swallowed her whole. Ethan felt the weight of the decision before he made it. He could ride on, tell himself someone else would find her, that it wasn't his problem. Instead, he lifted her gently and settled her in front of him on the saddle. She stiffened, then relaxed when she realized he meant no harm. As they rode toward his ranch, Ethan didn't know that careful eyes already followed their trail, nor that this small act of mercy would change the course of his lonely life forever. Morning came softly to Ethan Cole's ranch, carried on the smell of coffee and the sound of chickens scratching in the dirt. Nayeli sat on the porch step, watching the world with quiet attention, as if she were learning its rules all over again. Ethan noticed how quickly she adapted, how her fear gave way to curiosity. She ate carefully, thanked him with a shy nod, and followed him at a distance while he went about his chores. The ranch, once a place of routine and silence, felt different now, alive in a way Ethan hadn't realized he'd been missing. He kept glancing toward the tree line, half expecting riders to appear at any moment. A child like Nayeli didn't belong to the open plains without someone searching for her. Apache trackers were known for patience, and Ethan respected that. He made sure the gates were closed and his rifle stayed within reach, though he hoped he wouldn't need it. Nayeli seemed to sense the tension. She stayed close, her small hand occasionally brushing his coat sleeve, as if seeking reassurance. It was just after dawn on the second day when the air changed. The birds went quiet, and Ethan felt the unmistakable prickle of being watched. He turned slowly and saw her standing near the cottonwoods, a woman tall and steady, as much a part of the land as the trees themselves. Her dark hair was braided with care, streaked with silver that caught the early light. Her eyes, fixed on Nayeli, held relief sharpened by caution. Ethan raised his hand slightly, showing he meant no harm. The woman stepped forward, her presence calm but commanding. She spoke in a low voice, and Nayeli ran to her, clinging to her waist. The woman's arms wrapped around her daughter with fierce tenderness. Before she looked back at Ethan, when she spoke again, her English was slow but clear. Her name was Ayanna. Ethan told the truth. He had found Nayeli alone and brought her in so she wouldn't die out there. Ayanna listened without interrupting, measuring his words as carefully as his posture. Gratitude softened her expression, though it didn't erase her wariness. She accepted the food he offered, but refused to sit until she understood his intentions. As the sun climbed, they shared a quiet meal. Stories passed between them of loss, survival, and long roads traveled alone. Ethan felt something shift as he listened to Ayanna speak. This wasn't an enemy before him, but a mother who had crossed fire and distance for her child. And for the first time in years, Ethan sensed his guarded heart beginning to open. The days that followed unfolded with an uneasy calm, as if the land itself were holding its breath. Ayanna did not leave right away. She said the trail home was long and that Nayeli needed rest. But Ethan sensed there was more to it than that. The ranch became a shared space where careful distance slowly softened into quiet. Cooperation. Ayanna helped with the cooking and mending, her movements sure and efficient, while Nayeli laughed more freely with each passing day, chasing chickens and learning to ride with Ethan guiding the reins. Trust did not arrive all at once. It grew in small moments, Ayanna watching. Ethan teach her daughter to handle a horse with patience instead of force. Ethan seeing the way Ayanna's voice gentled whenever she spoke to Nayeli. At night, they sat near the fire. The vast sky stretched above them, and exchanged stories in low voices. Ayanna spoke of her people's endurance, of adapting without forgetting who they were. Ethan spoke of a life shaped by solitude, of a ranch that had felt more like a burden than a home until now. Trouble came without warning. One afternoon, dust rose on the horizon, signaling riders moving fast and careless. Ethan recognized the danger immediately, men who took what they wanted and asked questions later. He reached for his rifle, but Ayanna was already moving, pulling Nayeli to safety with a calm born of experience. Side by side, they prepared to defend what mattered. When the riders finally turned away, discouraged by the readiness they found, the tension broke like a storm passing. In the quiet that followed, something changed. Fear had been replaced by respect, and respect by a fragile bond neither had planned. Ayanna admitted she had expected hostility when she tracked her daughter here, not kindness. Ethan confessed he had never imagined his life intersecting with hers, yet now couldn't picture the days returning to silence. When the time came to decide their paths, Ayanna surprised him. She would not leave just yet. The land felt right, she said, and Nayeli had found joy here. Ethan understood. Then that the child he had taken in had brought more than responsibility. She had brought possibility. Under the wide western sky, two guarded hearts chose to face the unknown together, discovering that love, like the frontier, rewarded only those brave enough to claim it. Autumn crept in quietly, painting the plains in gold and rust, and with it came a new rhythm to life on the ranch. What had begun as an act of necessity was slowly becoming something that felt like purpose. Ayanna moved through the days with growing ease, no longer a guest, but not yet settled enough to call the place home. She rose early, greeting the sun in her own way before helping Ethan with the work. He watched her from a distance at first, struck by how naturally she belonged to the land, as if the soil recognized her steps. Nayeli thrived between them. She learned letters from Ethan in the evenings and shared stories from her, people with him in return, her young voice weaving the past and present together. Laughter became common, easing the shadows that once filled the house. Still, beneath the calm ran an undercurrent of uncertainty. Word traveled fast in the west, and neighbors were beginning to notice Ethan was no longer alone. Not everyone looked kindly on change. The tension surfaced one afternoon when a neighboring rancher rode in uninvited, his eyes lingering too long on Ayanna and his tone sharp with suspicion. Ethan stood firm, his voice steady as he made it clear she and Nayeli were under his protection. Ayanna met the man's gaze without flinching, pride and warning in her expression. When the rider finally left, the silence he left behind felt heavier than before. That night, Ayanna spoke honestly. Staying meant risk for Ethan, for Nayeli, and for herself. The world beyond the ranch was not forgiving to those who crossed invisible lines. Ethan listened, knowing she spoke the truth. He admitted his own fear, not of danger, but of losing what had quietly grown between them. He had lived alone so long that hope felt almost reckless. Ayanna stepped outside, looking at the stars that had guided her ancestors for generations. She said the heart, like the land, chose its own paths. She had come to reclaim her daughter, but in doing so, she had found something unexpected, a man whose kindness did not demand surrender. When she returned inside, she placed her hand over Ethan's, a simple gesture carrying a promise neither needed to name. As the fire burned low, the ranch no longer felt like a stopping place. It felt like the beginning of a story still being written, shaped by courage, trust, and the quiet decision to build a life where none was supposed to exist.